Good morning, and it is time to talk with Caleb Roebuck and Ashley Franco, Building Rural Wealth. Well, sometimes when you're talking about financial plans and being responsible with your finances, and there are some hard conversations, and some aren't very much fun.
Yeah.
So today, 7 life transitions that may reshape your finances. So talk to me about this. Set this up for me.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of talk about 7 life transitions most people will face as we age and what you can do to kind of prepare, protect your finances, or care for the people you love. One is your parents will get older. You'll start to notice, hey, maybe your mom forgets to pay the water bill, or maybe your dad just doesn't get around as easily. So kind of things to talk about is health discussions, kind of sitting down and talking about both their current health and their doctor visits, but also kind of that coordination between your siblings too. Who's going to take your parents to the doctors? Who's going to kind of track their medical stuff? Who's going to kind of track their finances? And what do the parents want? Because those might be conflicting things. Mm-hmm. And we'll see a lot is one sibling will live near mom and dad and end up taking on most of that responsibility, and how to kind of pre-plan to share that responsibility can help a lot in different family dynamics. The other big one to consider is long-term care planning. So do your parents want to stay in their house? Can they afford assisted living? Or do they have insurance? And this is kind of a startling statistic. 1 in 3 people will be required to use a nursing home facility in their lifetime.
Yes. Wow.
Or 70% of 65 plus will need some sort of healthcare help.
All right. So your parents will get old. Next comes Caleb. Your parents will pass away.
Your parents will pass away, and just like Ashley said, you are going to be grieving at time. There's going to be a lot of things, being thrown at you, and this is what a lot of our clients are dealing with now, that transition of their parents aging, passing away, and then that also wealth transition too.
Yeah.
Where they're having to deal with, first of all, figuring out what is an estate, what are my parents' estate. The prior generation was ones that didn't share a lot with their kids and stuff. So, they're having to figure out, what asset types they have. Do they have hard financial assets? Is it land, a business, equipment, or is it financial assets? Especially if you're, in a dynamic family that is going to pass on assets, that has, family dynamics of just multiple siblings, having a point person and knowing who is that point person that is either working with mom and dad or mom and dad's advisor, getting in hold of them and starting to work with them.
Okay. Next thing, Ashley, after that would be that you or individuals will fight to stay healthy as we get a little older, right? So.
Yeah. I heard this great quote. So under 50, you trade your health for money, and then over 50, you trade your money for health.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really doesn't work that way. But the key thing is kind of figuring out what type of insurance you have, whether you are going to go with traditional Medicare or a Medicare Advantage plan. Both are different. Both have different insurance coverages as well as gaps. And key thing here, they change every year. So it's really important to talk with someone, and Denise in our office actually does this. I don't know if people know that, but we'll walk through saying, hey, this is what your insurance will cover, here is what it won't cover, and then kind of plan for that as well. Other thing a lot of people don't realize is there's this thing called IRMAA, where if you earn an additional for like a joint household over $212,000 in a year, you'll have an additional premium on your Part B and Part D Medicare supplements. And the key thing here is it's not year for year, it's for the prior 2 years, just to make it a little bit more complicated.
Sure.
And we'll see this quite often with farmers. Hey, I'm getting out of farming. I just did this big either equipment sale or land sale, and I did my taxes. I paid it all up. I think I'm good. 2 years down the road, their Medicare increases, and they're like, what the heck? So things to kind of look for back, but also forward to plan for.
The next thing, Caleb, if we do that well enough, we're going to reach retirement age. Talk to me about what we're going to make decisions on there.
Yeah, eventually after you've dealt with your parents getting sick, passing away, you're no.
And then you're fighting to stay healthy. Now we get to retire.
Yeah. But again, like from a high level, though, I mean, we joke, but again, we all know like that is the circle of
That's
life.
the
So
cycle.
yeah,
That's the
so
cycle.
in some reality, like that is part of how we're all going to do it again. But knowing that, that's where we say, hey, you can make it your own because that's what you want to do. Especially, you know, after you've done all those things, when you reach that retirement age, this is what you've worked for. You know, to do all the things that you've saved, you've sacrificed, you've, you know, put in the hours to do, you know, you've kind of reached it there. And, you know, even if you keep working, you know, the financial world, the real world does start treating you different at 62, 65, 70, 70 and a half. 70, you know, there's all these different ages out there where now you start becoming eligible for Medicare, you know, Social Security. You know, you can retire from your company on this certain date to earn your pension, or now you're vested,
Right.
or whatever the rules may be. So, you know, the opportunities just start to change. But you do got to start considering and things to review of for your Social Security, for example. You know, am I going to claim early? Am I going to wait? You know, what is my spouse's benefit? And, you know, you really got to do that break-even analysis and, you know, consider other income sources. You know, Medicare. You know, what am I going to do for Medicare now for myself? I've dealt with it with my parents. I've kind of dealt with it on the edges a little bit, but now I need to sign up for myself in my own health situation, which again, like we tell people all the time with Medicare, you're kind of signing up year to year and guessing somewhat, how healthy am I going to be over the next year?
Yeah.
You know, as you age, you know, again, we all think we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but again, that circle of life thing, what do just
Yep.
the averages tell us? You know, we'll get, so we need to think of that. Tax planning is a big one. You know, now you may qualify for certain deductions, you know, in the future you may not, you know.
Now, we're retired.
Yes. Woo.
So here we are. You'll manage multiple income sources. You're going to have all these things coming at you. So what do we need to know there, Ashley?
Exactly. So like when you're working, you'll probably have maybe one or two income streams: your salary, your partner's salary, or maybe like business income. When you retire, now you have Social Security, maybe part-time work, your IRAs, rental properties, your pension, and maybe just dividends coming into you.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of figuring out your cash flow, figuring out a withdrawal strategy that minimizes your taxes, but also it keeps your income steady, whether that's utilizing that 4% withdrawal rate on your investment portfolio, claiming maybe early on your Social Security, letting your investments grow, or vice versa, figuring out, hey, what lever are we going to pull first to keep our income steady and consistent for us? The other big one is RMDs. So anyone who has a pre-tax account, whether that's a 401k or an IRA or a simple, will have a required minimum distribution. Right now, that age is at 73. For those born after 1960, that age got moved to 75.
Okay.
It might change again with how laws change, but that's when you hit that age, they say, Uncle Sam, I've waited long enough. You gotta start pulling your income.
The next thing, you'll get old. We're going to grow old. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, in a weird way, that's kind of the point of all this, right? Like, we want to grow old and do all that.
We want to.
you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
well, and that is the weird thing. Is like, again, when you're young, you don't think all this stuff, you're going to live till 80, 90, or whatever it is. But, you know, hopefully if you take care of yourself, I mean, again, that is the goal and you do that and you get there. But, yeah, you know, someday, you know, the roles will reverse and you'll go from being the one that was the caregiver, you know, to the one that is now needing the care, you know, which, you know, for a lot of folks, you know, it is the hard truth. For everybody, it probably is, you know, it's that hard truth. When that comes, you know, what you need to decide, you know, prior to is, how am I going to age? Am I going to age in place? You know, where and how do I want to live? Am I able to stay in my home with my spouse, with myself? You know, have we done renovations that make it available to do that? And, you know, when you're in your 50s, 60s, you know, those are the times to be thinking of that, doing that.
Yeah.
You know, am I going to have to move? How are you going to afford it? You know, disability and care support. You know, what services will you need to care for? You know, have you had a conversation with your kids? Hey, you know, will you take care of me? Or, hey, you know, I'm going to need to have services come into the house. What resources are going to be able to pay for that? You know, do you have policies in place? Aging isn't easy for anybody, but it truly, when your financial life is in order, it is much, much easier, because it is like, that's when your resources need to take over and kind of guide the people then at that point too. But again, you need to plan for that. You need to hopefully be working with somebody, but you need to just most importantly be thinking about that.
Well, Ashley,
Yeah.
No.
you'll grow old and then you'll pass away.
Full circle.
Full
here.
circle. Here we are. So what do we need to know about that?
Yeah. Well, someday someone else is going to handle your accounts, your estate, and your final wishes, whether that be your kid or your spouse. And those are kind of two distinct different things that you kind of either want to prepare for or say, hey, if this happens, I want this to happen, or if this happens, I want this. We say about every 3 to 5 years. It never hurts to look through these, or especially after a big change. If a spouse passes away, hey, maybe it's a good time to get everything reviewed and just update. And that's always a hard topic, but it's also kind of what we call like an act of stewardship. So you're preparing for an ending, but you're shaping a legacy.
Yeah.